Have you been wondering if a certain macro ratio will actually affect your weight loss results and if you should be aiming for a certain macro ratio? Well, by the end of today's video, you're going to know if macro ratios actually affect your weight loss results and different ratios you may want to look out for. Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going over everything about macro ratios and if they actually make a difference when you're trying to lose weight. And if you're new here and you're new to my videos, my name's Aaron. I'm an online fat loss coach and I'm currently putting out about one video a week. And if you want to keep getting updates for these types of videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. So with that out of the way, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and let's get into if macro ratios actually matter. So before we actually go over if macro ratios matter when you're trying to lose weight, we do need to make an important comparison. That is the difference between weight loss and fat loss. These two things are quite different from one another, and the effect of macro ratios has a different effect on each. So they will affect weight loss a little bit differently than fat loss. So to give you a simple and basic comparison, weight loss is simply just purely losing weight. The goal of someone just losing weight, it doesn't matter if it's fat tissue, it could also be muscle tissue. With fat loss, the goal with fat loss is to maintain muscle mass while losing as much fat as possible. So with fat loss, we're only concerned with losing fat and keeping as much muscle as we can, whereas weight loss, it doesn't matter if we lose both. So the effect of macro ratios is going to differ for each one. So first, let's go into weight loss and how macros actually affect your weight loss results. So when it comes to weight loss, do your macros actually matter? Well, not really. And I'm going to show you two different studies that will kind of help make this clear. So if we use this study here, I'm going to also link this down below. They mainly studied the effect of focusing on a certain macronutrient and different macro ratios, such as prioritizing protein, fat, or carbs in a diet. And what they found is that it didn't have a difference in weight loss results for the participants. So the actual macro ratios didn't really matter in terms of weight loss results. And if we use this giant research review here, and I'll have it linked down below, they went over a bunch of studies studying PCOS. And if you want to go through it, I would recommend it. It's a very good read. There's about 33, 34 studies on there. And if you go through them, a lot of studies varied macro ratios and studied the effects of like higher fat or higher protein. And there wasn't a large difference between the groups in terms of just weight loss. Because in that study, they weren't measuring fat loss, it was just weight loss in general. It didn't matter if it was muscle mass or fat mass. So if we take these two into account, it doesn't really matter what the exact macro ratio you're following is. When it does come to weight loss, the main thing that you do need to actually have down is you do need to be in a caloric deficit. You need to be eating less calories than your body needs to maintain its body weight. So if you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight because you're eating less calories than what your body needs. So the exact macro ratio doesn't really have much of an influence. You're going to lose weight regardless. So when it comes to fat loss, it's a bit of a different story because in this, we're not just losing weight in general. We're not losing fat and muscle mass. We're concerned with maintaining as much muscle mass as we can and losing as much fat as we can. So we do need to sort of optimize our macro ratio to actually make that a little more possible. And the one thing that does help with that is prioritizing your protein intake. So if you want to learn a lot more about prioritizing your protein, carb, and fat intake when you're dieting, I'm going to link a study here and down below. It goes over a lot of bodybuilding athletes in how they diet when they're prepping for a show, and it would be very useful if you want to learn more about just dieting in general and how to optimize your macros in general as well. So when it comes to maintaining your muscle mass and losing your fat, having a larger amount of protein, so if you're between like 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight to around 2 grams per kilo of body weight, that's going to be a very good protein goal in order to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. There are some studies showing like 2.3 grams per kilo or like 3.2 grams per kilo of body weight of protein is a little more optimal, but honestly that is a quite significant amount of protein for a lot of people to get in a day, and it can be a little difficult to hit that, especially if your calories are a little lower. So when it comes to fat loss, it is best to prioritize your protein intake so that way you can lose as much fat as possible while maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. And if you want to learn more about protein intake while dieting and the numbers that you should shoot for, just leave a comment down below and I can get a video made on that topic. So does your macro ratio actually affect your fat loss? Yes. Compared to weight loss, your macro ratio will actually make a difference in your fat loss results because you'll be able to maintain more muscle mass while losing fat. So when you do lose your weight, you're going to have more muscle mass and you're going to have a more defined and muscular look compared to losing weight, where you're going to be losing muscle mass. So you're going to be more stringy when you get to the end goal. And before we finish off, there's another aspect of macros that we really need to talk about, and that is compliance with your diet. Your macro ratio that you choose can really have a positive or negative effect on how well you can actually stick with your diet. So yes, you may be able to lose weight easily if you're in a caloric deficit, but just being able to stick with your diet and actually feel good with your diet, your macro ratio can make things a lot easier if you do optimize things. So for example, if you do have a higher protein intake, if you want to learn more about protein intake while dieting and like the effects of having more protein, I'm going to link a video up here on the benefits of having more protein in your diet. But one of the things with protein is that it's going to help you feel more full and you're going to be a lot more satiated after eating a meal. So if you're more full after your meals and during the day, you're going to be less likely to snack and eat more than what you need to in your meals. So it's going to be easier overall to stick within your calorie budget and stay on top of your diet. As well, throughout my years of coaching, I've found a lot of people feel better at different macro ratios. So for myself, I usually feel better at a moderate to high carb diet. Whereas I have some clients who feel a lot better at a lower carb goal than a higher carb goal, even when calories are equal. So there are some who feel better at higher fat or lower carb, or lower fat, higher carb, and kind of finding that ratio that works best for you will help your compliance with your diet, because you're just going to feel better and you're going to be a lot happier with how you're eating, you'll have more energy, and it's going to be just easier, plain and simple, to stick to your diet. So that is one aspect that we did need to discuss because it can have a large influence on the actual success of your diet, and that is the actual compliance to your diet. So does your macro ratio actually affect your weight loss? It's kind of a yes and no answer. If your goal is simply just to lose weight and you don't care if you lose fat and muscle, then the exact macro ratio you use doesn't really matter. But if your goal is to maintain as much muscle mass as you can, which should be the goal, honestly, and also lose as much fat as you can, then your macro ratio can have an actual influence on those results. And often prioritizing your protein intake will give you far better results. And the last thing that we covered, it can affect your actual compliance to your diet. And that is a large thing that is important to consider when you are trying to lose weight. And that is, how easy is it for you to stick to a diet? And sometimes optimizing your macros can make a world of a difference. So would I say macros actually matter when you're trying to lose weight? I would say at the start, not really. The main goal should be to be in a caloric deficit and making sure you're actually eating enough food so you can lose weight. And then as you get going, as you get more comfortable with that, then you can start playing around with your macros and trying to optimize things. Often trying to do all of that right at the start can be a little overwhelming. So start off slow, just be in a caloric deficit, and then as you get more comfortable, try and tweak some things. So I hope you found today's video useful. And if you did, just let me know down in the comments if your opinion on macros has changed from the start of the video to the end of the video. And if you want to see more videos on like macros or weight loss nutrition, just leave a comment down below on different topics that you would want to see. So make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you liked this video and want to see more like it. And I'll see you guys next time.